Okay, so I am here for another MEI podcast, as we're calling it now. I'm here with Mark Morganelli. He is a wonderful flugelhorn and trumpet player, along with he books and he runs a nonprofit jazz venue in Tarrytown, New York. Thanks for being here, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Dave. Appreciate it.
Well, I'll mention that I came to know you as your employee. I was I was bussing tables at the club while I
Yes.
was in college, and it was an absolute pleasure for me to see the quality and the caliber of musicians that come in there. I wrote down some names that really blew me away while I was there.
Yeah.
Jimmy Cobb,
Oh,
John
yeah.
John Pizzarelli, Joey DiFrancesco, uh, Nielsen Mata, and one of the younger guys, Julius Rodriguez.
Yes.
And that's just a very small sample size
Yeah.
of some of the guys that, or some of the people that you have coming in there to blow away your audience.
Yeah, it's very special. Thankfully, I've built up a lot of relationships with other artists through 41 years of presenting in New York. I started when I was 24. How old are you now?
I'm going to be 23 in June, so I'm
Yeah.
almost there.
So I opened my first loft up in Greenwich Village at 50 Cooper Square to the public as the Jazz Forum in 1979. And in that first summer, Jimmy Cobb played at my place. So, and he's 91 now and
Yeah.
still playing great. So I've been really, really blessed and fortunate to come in contact with all these wonderful artists and in a lot of cases be able to play with them and learn from them. So it was only natural when Ellen and I decided to take this building and build a club and open the new Jazz Forum here that I would call on my previous relationships with these folks and try to invite them to come and play with their groups. So that's been great.
Well, I'll just ask because it comes to mind. I know you're from kind of where I'm from originally in the North Shore of Nassau County.
Glad- yeah.
Why exactly was Tarrytown, like, why did you guys pick the location that you picked? I'm just curious. It's a beautiful area.
Yeah, we both Ellen and I grew up in Glen Head and the North Shore there in Long Island, and she went to Barnard, and I went to Bucknell in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. We didn't get together until our 10-year college reunion. 10-year high school reunion, and so that was in 1983, and we were two of very few people that were living in New York City. So that's how we got together. And then when we decided to move out of New York City, having gotten married and had our first child, Ian, we looked at the river towns because we had friends up here in Hastings, actually. And so we fell in love with the river towns, and that led us up to here. And then once we moved up to Westchester, within 6 months, I began presenting a jazz series at the Tarrytown Music Hall. So that ran for 22 years and approximately 150 concerts.
Wow.
So between that experience and doing presenting free concerts in Westchester, including in Tarrytown, that led us to look when we decided to downsize from our larger home in Dobbs Ferry to something else, to consider moving to Tarrytown. And we wound up with this commercial building,
So you said you started booking at 24. At what point did the nonprofit officially come into shape?
So that was 1979. The club lasted in 2 iterations at Cooper Square, which I mentioned, and 648 Broadway at Bleecker, the second one, for 4 years roughly. Then I produced at the Village Gate for a little while and in Bleecker and Thompson there. Moved up to the Upper West Side when I met Ellen, and started Jazz Forum Arts, the nonprofit, in 1985 to present the Riverside Park Arts Festival. So this is our 35th anniversary in July.
Wow.
Of the nonprofit. Yeah.
I guess it's been a wonderful growth over the years for you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
So the model is kind of interesting, and there aren't that many jazz clubs nationwide that are based on a nonprofit model. There are a few, most notably Jazz at Lincoln Center, Dizzy's Club Coca-Cola. but which I guess now they dropped the Coca-Cola because I think that sponsorship evaporated. But anyway, for us, running the club as a program of the nonprofit, I was able to cut a deal with Montefiore Health System. So they continue as our presenting sponsor, which is fabulous. And then we get support from Arts Westchester and a lot of individuals and individual contributors as well.
Yeah, it seems like just from my recollection of serving people there and spending time amongst the crowds that came in, it seemed like there was a certain community of people there that I guess they personally not only invested their time but put money into the club, and it seemed to be a real I don't know, I guess it really was a fulfilling thing in a soulful way to a lot of people
Absolutely.
that you know, work a 9 to 5 and get to be able to put some of that hard-earned money into something that seems like a worthy cause. And it really is, because it's not only great like from a subjective point, but it brings so much joy to so many people, and to support the people that have that kind of skill, that have invested their whole lives into an art form, is
Yeah.
really there needs to be more nonprofit for jazz. Because,
Well, it's been great. I didn't mean to cut you off. It's been great, and the support has been heartwarming. And especially now in this coronavirus period where we're unfortunately closed with the operation of the club until we can reopen, we're getting support from folks online. We're offering a program called Jazz Forum at Home, which is a weekly e-blast, which has links to live music, some of which was done here at the club, and we were able to record off that little pole there by the bandstand, but also recommended videos and archival photographs and little bits and pieces where we get everybody involved. And then every Saturday, starting a few weeks ago, we began a live stream program on Facebook, where I've invited various artists that have played at the club to do a half-hour live stream on Facebook from their home in this isolation period.
gotcha.
So, yeah, so Julius Rodriguez, who you mentioned earlier, was the first. And then Sherma Andrews, who has played here, and so she sang and played keyboards. Last week was Ted Rosenthal. This Saturday from the Southwest, because she moved to the Southwest from up in Westchester, Ann Hampton Calloway. And then next Saturday, a personal favorite of mine, Camille Berthaud, who is an internet sensation, you know, singing John Coltrane's Giant Steps, you know, and so she's going to perform with her dad, who plays piano, from their apartment in Paris.
Very cool.
That's gonna be cool, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I guess that I've seen now that, you know, unfortunately you can't go to the nearest venue and play a gig, is the biggest upside is how international, or how far these virtual gigs can travel now. You know,
Oh, yeah.
you can, exactly that. You're coming from Paris or anywhere in the world, and bringing it. So I just to kind of turn the page a little bit, one of the things that was admirable about the Jazz Forum was all of the Brazilian music that was and I haven't unfortunately gotten to see so much of it outside of your venue. Would you mind just talking to me about like why that's such an important thing? And I agree with you. It's great music and it's worth presenting. How did you come to in a position where you're presenting so much Brazilian jazz?
So slightly after I opened the Jazz Forum in '79, roughly about 1980, I was rowing in Central Park in the lake there, and there was this amazing music coming from the shore. And when I got back on shore, I went over and I met the musicians, and it was my percussion player buddy, who has since passed away, Guilherme Franco from Brazil, with his samba band called Peje Boy, which from the Portuguese, it translates roughly into foot of the bull. That was the name of the samba band. He called it a power samba band. It was about a 9, 10, 11-piece samba band with dancers, singers, percussionists, and sometimes horn players. So he invited me to collaborate with him and his group, and I wound up playing carnival gigs with that band in Providence, Rhode Island, Newark, New Jersey, and Manhattan in 1980. And in fact, Sonny Rollins' nephew, Clifton Anderson, trombone player, was the other horn player with me, and Joe Ford, who is the last surviving member of the Fort Apache band. And we just lost Andy Gonzalez this week. So the three of us, Joe, myself, and Clifton, were the three horns with the rhythm section and the dancers and the singers and the whole bit. And so it was infectious. And so I really started my love of Brazilian music through samba and carnival. And then I got into bossa nova. And now I'm into those forms and starting to explore other forms. So I just recorded here at the club my new double CD called Brasil, which has 28 tracks by 10 different Brazilian composers. And one of them is by my late buddy, Claudio Roditi, who wrote a toada, which is a dance form from the north of Brazil, in Minas Gerais, where he grew up. So that kind of is a roundabout way of explaining why so much Brazilian music in the jazz form, because I love it.
Yeah, I think your audience kind of shares that that passion for just the good feelings that the music brings. It's often that's really the only time when the performers are telling people to get up and dance there.
Yeah.
It definitely brings a different energy into the room, and it's a great thing to see, and it was a great opportunity while I was there to be able to, because I have the fortune of not only being in the front of house there while the musicians are playing, but during their breaks and whatnot, I go back to the kitchen and they would be in the green room there.
Right.
And
right.
it was such a great look into the world of gigging musicians to see
Yes.
these guys, and I could ask them where they were headed next and that kind of thing, and it just gave me insights as to kind of how people make it in the music world, really.
Yeah, and the Brazilians are so soulful. I mean, it's just a beautiful vibe. They're really about the music and their culture. So we've now added, with our new chef, John Chambal, he has started making feijoada, which is the Brazilian national dish. So we offer that feijoada in addition to caipirinhas, which is the national drink. And so we create a whole vibe. And then Ellen had the great idea, because she loves dancing, to open up a dance floor area between the bandstand and the Don't Walk sign in that area. So now, depending on the Brazilian group, if it lends itself to dancing, we'll open that up for dancing too.
That's great. That's really great. It's good that you're bringing the cuisine to a place that kind of matches the music.
Yeah. Yes.
I don't know. I've just been told that good food and good music go hand in hand, and
very, very organic.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned before that you've recorded a double album there, and I know you have some history as a record producer. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about that, and I guess I'll just ask by when you got started producing records.
Sure. I brought my college big band, the Bucknell Jazz and Rock Ensemble, to the Montreux Jazz Festival in 1976 to perform. I was 20 years old.
Cool.
And 21 and whatever, 21, I guess. And I was able to get a recording of our performance there, and also a recording of our performance the following week when we returned to the US, and we played as the opening act to Sha Na Na at Wolf Trap Farm Park in Vienna, Virginia.
Wow.
So, yeah. So I took those two recordings, picked the best tracks of each and put that out as an album called BJRE Live in Montreux and Wolf Trap. And that was the first album I ever produced. So I guess 1976.
Wow.
Yeah.
So were these multi-track recordings, or were they or audience tapes?
I can't even remember. It was definitely, reel to reels back in the day, and I just can't even remember how it was. But I put that together, and then I did a studio album the next year with the band in New York at a place called CI Recording down the block from Carnegie Hall on 57th Street, and we did a multi-track. And the first track was God Bless the Child. Our trombonist, Doug Palmer, did an expanded Blood, Sweat, and Tears arrangement where we featured a vocalist by the name of Greg Crumbly, who was fantastic, young guy. So that got my feet wet for producing, having done live and studio. And then several years later, just a few, when I had the Jazz Forum, I made my first record called Live on Broadway in 1982. And then that led me into live productions about several years later, when I was the music coordinator at Birdland, when it was uptown on 105th at Broadway. And so I was recommended by Michael Kaskuna, who's a celebrated producer for Blue Note Records, among other things. Mosaic Records is his company. And he recommended me to Alan Bates, who's still with us. I think he's 93, 94, and he's over in England. And so I produced 40 albums for Alan Bates's Candid Records label. So I got a lot of great experience doing that, and then have wound up working for Akeem Neumann, who was distributing Candid and now has 1201 Music and Blue Chip Jazz. So I did a bunch of records for them. And then my own productions, my Romance and the Brazil album on my own label. And Five is Bliss I did in the studio. That was in Tony Bennett's house in Englewood, New Jersey in the mid-'80s. So I did a lot of combination of live at Riverside Park, where we did the Riverside Park Arts Festival, live at Birdland, and in studios. About 60 albums in total.
Wow. What would you say, I guess, because it seems to me that the role of the producer sometimes has to change a little bit depending on what other people might be in the room or involved in the project, and record companies and I guess managers and whatever it might be.
Oh yeah, yeah.
What would you say kind of was the underlying role that you felt you played as a producer?
More of a facilitator, I would think, trying to engender creativity and let the artists be themselves, and just kind of guide the project and document it, and then program it sequentially, into a musical whole of roughly an hour for a CD, for example. What comes to mind are two dates that we did at the old RCA studios, which no longer exist in Midtown. One was Donald Harrison's Indian Blues. Donald, being from New Orleans, had invited Dr. John Mac Rebenek to be on the record. He was supposed to do 2 tunes. I convinced him to do 5 tunes on the record. So I was very proud of that. And that was a really organic collaboration between Donald's jazz group and Mac Rebenek, Dr. John, doing Black Mardi Gras Indian music and jazz combined with kind of a Coltrane vibe. It was a very hip album, Indian Blues on Candid. And then the other date in that studio at RCA was Paquito de Rivera, the great Cuban alto saxophonist and clarinetist, with his group, featuring and in tribute to James Moody. And I was able to be on that on flugelhorn on a couple of tracks, with Claudio Roditi on trumpet, Danilo Perez, Harvey S., and Al Foster in the rhythm section. And that was a great experience. So those 2 dates particularly stand out. There were a lot of other great ones, the 2 piano dates we did at Riverside Park with Barry Harris and Kenny Barron, and then Kenny Barron and John Hicks. Those are 2 great ones too.
It's interesting that, like, I guess having done a lot more production in the rock and pop world, it's less of a dates kind of game, and it's more of a, project. The tracking of a project can be something that gets, I don't want to say dragged out, but it can be a long process. And from what I gather, and from some of my experiences, I've had the fortune of working with a couple of jazz groups, and just some groups. When you have guys that are that proficient in their performance, it's really just tracking comes down to a date. Often.
Yes. It's funny. You're reminding me of when I was doing Birdland. I was about to record my album for Candid as a leader, which is called Speak Low from 1990 with Kenny Barron, Ron Carter, and Jimmy Cobb. Wow. And I was getting a little nervous, and apprehensive about it. And I happened to be downstairs in the musician's room. It was, I think, the 50th anniversary of Blue Note Records. And I was talking to McCoy Tyner about it. And he said, "Don't worry, man, relax. A live recording is but a documentation of a moment in time." And that really did relax me, thinking like, okay, it's just going to be a recording of whatever we're playing on stage and choose the best tracks, and that's it. So I cooled out about it from just his words, So that was nice. And studio things you can really fine tune when you've got, like you said, multi tracks and mixing. We'll fix it in the mix and all of that stuff, and
Yeah.
board fades, and you can hide a multitude of errors.
Yeah. It's not so black and white, I should say, because I guess you can take great performers, and I guess if you don't want it, because there are so many approaches you can have. I have a lot of respect and appreciation, and I go down an improvisational route myself. So what McCoy Tyner said to you about being in the moment and having a live recording just reflect the moment, that definitely resonates with me a lot. But at the same, my mind goes to like Steely Dan, who at a very early age, or very early in my music career, they were just a big influence to me from like a professionalism standpoint, as it came to performance, production, recording.
On a very high level.
Yeah. So it really can come all the way around from like a live recording to something as well tuned and taken care of in almost more than a meticulous way. So there's certainly room for a lot of different, that's what music's so great for. Just
it's a different approach. There are a lot of different approaches, and I've also heard the stories of pop stars taking a year or two, in the studio to make one record, and
certainly,
jazz musicians do not have that luxury financially, and so I would say that of the 60 albums I produced, most of them were done in a 6-hour session or a 5-hour session. That's a whole different animal.
It's a great thing in a certain way. I guess a big part of it, a lot of your consideration then comes down to what's getting played on the album as it comes to covers and originals. And I don't know if you have to worry about the licensing of that stuff.
Well, when I was producing for these other companies, I didn't accept that. I would document it and give in, all the composer credits and publishing credits, and then they would go to ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and all that, and get those licenses. I had to do that with my album, with the Brazil album that I just put out, and now the whole landscape has changed because I did it through disc makers in Philly, pressed with them, and then was selling it through CD Baby, which I now understand is folding pretty much.
Oh, really? I hadn't heard that. Oh my God.
Yeah. Wow. So, and I think they're allied. I'm not sure if disc makers own CD Baby, but whatever it is, the whole landscape has changed. Thankfully, as you know, we have a merchandise operation next to our box office at the Jazz Forum Club. So I have sold, I'd say 90% of the CDs that I've sold, which is only maybe 400 or 500, but I've sold them out of the box office right here at the place, at the Jazz Forum. And in some outdoor summer concerts and on a few gigs. And CD Baby sold some. But generally, a lot of it, as you know, is now downloads, Spotify and Pandora and all of that stuff. So, iTunes.
As a musician nowadays, a lot of my focus does go towards the streaming world and trying to put together a product that fits that format as best I can. But at the same time, too, like what you're talking about, the volume of CDs, it's not an easy thing for an artist that isn't a pop star to sell 400 or 500 CDs,
Right.
I think there's I think a lot of people that go see live music nowadays, before, I guess now the shows aren't going on, but before all this happened, a lot of times when people were going out to see live music, they definitely had an extra buck that they're happy to spend on a nice piece of merchandise.
Yep.
And a lot of touring acts these days, I know, aside from ticket sales, they really can hone in on just their cut of the money without having everyone take something from it on their own merchandise.
Yeah, and also what's nice here, especially at the club, we've used the pool room now with the pool table in there for in between sets or after sets for the artists to go and meet the public and sign their CDs.
Yeah.
Or LPs. People are actually bringing LPs now to sell and sign. So that's great. But then we're getting a lot of people now who say, I don't own a CD player anymore, nor do I have a CD capability in my car.
Yeah.
So it's gotten to the point where the streaming is so important, yet I don't think myself about presenting music, to the public in streams. I think of it as an album, a CD, or a live set. I'm not into but you know what? Now with what we're doing, I'm putting up a tune every day, 1 minute, minute and a half of just me playing trumpet or flugelhorn of the melody of a standard. And I've been putting that up and people have been digging that. So that's good. And now I've also been watching friends of mine who are very, well-known celebrated artists putting a daily Facebook live stream up. Most notably, Chick Corea. Every day, he's done 26 days in a row, basically an hour to about an hour and a quarter.
Wow.
Just him, solo piano, and he also has a little drums and vibes and stuff in his studio, talking about the music, playing jazz, classical, complete improvisation, talking about the theory of all of it. It's just so wonderful, and he gets about 2,000-3,000. People viewing every time he does it every day. It's been wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a really special window that you get into some people's careers and abilities. I haven't gotten to ask you yet much about your performance side of things.
Sure.
I feel like we've managed to speak about everything else.
Yeah, well, it's funny. We were supposed to go to Italy February 29th. I would have been there the whole month of March, of all places, right at the epicenter at that time of the pandemic. And naturally, we didn't go. And I was supposed to perform with Italian musicians in, of all places, Brescia and Milano,
Wow.
in Lombardy, and Bologna. So that all obviously got canned.
Really, the epicenter there, yeah.
Yeah, and this Sunday I would have been playing for the New Jersey Jazz Society through my friend Mitchell Seidel. Next Sunday I would have been playing up here at Union Church of Pocantico Hills, the Rockefeller Church with the Chagall and Matisse windows. So anyway, what I'm doing now is rescheduling whatever gigs I can and concentrating on practicing, because what I've learned over my entire career is you always have to be ready. You never know when the next major gig is going to happen for you. So as long as you are intent on your art, you will always be ready for whatever comes down the pike. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm practicing every day, hours every day, which is something I have not had the luxury to do running this business,
Yes.
with every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, 6 sets of music being presented and marketed and selling tickets and, ordering beers and wine and, all that stuff, So yeah. This gives me a great opportunity to really get on that really good playing level.
Yeah, we'll certainly have to, just from the people that I've spoken to, it's the people that do the booking that you might want to watch out for once this all ends, because they've all got the opportunity to just sit down with their instrument and look at it for 20 minutes straight without an email for once,
And you know what? I saw a nice thing that Spike Wilner, my friend who has the Smalls and Mesro clubs in New York, in the West Village, he has a nonprofit component to what he's doing. And Billy Joel's foundation just gave his nonprofit $25,000. So that was lovely to see,
Yes, Billy Joel is really sometimes steps in a surprising way as a music philanthropist, which is a great thing to see. So I guess just back to your playing a little bit.
Sure.
It's an interesting thing, and it's an interesting dynamic that you have between your playing career and your and just your presenting musicians. I remember one of the things that you told me while I was working for you is that you were never gonna present yourself at the Tarrytown Jazz Forum.
Well, it's funny. Yeah. Even when I had my jazz forum in the old days from 79 to 83, I did not do that. And I think what it is I saw my friend at the time, Mike Morgenstern, who is a saxophonist and owner of a loft called the Jazzmania Society. And I noticed, because I went there quite a bit. And I noticed that he would go up on stage virtually every weekend with the bands and play with them. And I was thinking, I wanted to come and see Pepper Adams, for example, play baritone saxophone. And I got less of that artist that I went to see because of, the other, what I call kind of imposition or insertion into the musical proceedings. So I thought about that. And when I opened, I played with my group the third weekend of the club in '79, in the summer of '79. After that, I booked myself very infrequently and sat in very judiciously.
Yep.
Then when I had the opportunity to book Birdland for 5.5 years, I played a little more, and that was, down the pike a little. But here I decided that I wanted to feature other artists. I did the soft opening with my group the weekend before we opened with Roy Hargrove in 2017. Yep. And then I've only played here when I put on the, as a leader, as being presented with my group. I only played here when I did my album release party and for the River Arts presentations of their free music, River Arts music tour. Other than that, I've sat in from time to time. Like, thankfully, you mentioned Joey DeFrancesco. Joey was so gracious that he asked me to sit in every set, 4 sets, 2 on Friday and 2 on Saturday when he last played here. And I played a different tune with him each set, which was great.
One of the things that I really remember from that, like it's an all-time musical memory, was his ability to play your lines back immediately.
Yeah, we were going back and forth there, trading. It was really nice. Yeah, he's a wonderful artist. He's coming back in the fall.
Oh, that's great.
Very excited, yeah.
And
you mentioned John Pizzarelli. John Pizzarelli is supposed to play here the first weekend of June, and he just lost both of his parents within about a week. Bucky Pizzarelli and his mother Ruth just passed away within 8 days of each other.
Oh my God! I heard about Bucky. I did not hear about.
Yeah. So I haven't spoken to John or communicated other than the offer condolences on his Facebook post, but I don't know. We'll have to see if he's in good shape to play that or not. Yeah, I just don't know.
Yeah, so it's such a tough time too, because I guess a lot of it comes down to when the state allows people to come back.
Yeah, because we're not just a music venue; we're a restaurant and bar operation in addition to being a music venue.
Yep.
So we're doing everything that we can do and to make a nice experience for people. But depending on how they do the gradual reopening, we'll see when that happens to be able to allow us to reopen.
Yeah, I guess we all have our fingers crossed, and we certainly wish the best for all the musicians that are having a hard time finding gigs right now, because there's nowhere to go out and play, unfortunately.
I have a list right over here on the wall of roughly 30 plus artists that I've already committed to presenting this summer in our 34 free summer concerts between Dobbs Ferry and Ossining all along the river. And I have to know that we are going to be able to do these.
Yeah.
Because I keep seeing, like California just said today, probably no outdoor large events this summer. In California, a state of 40 million people. So I don't know what's going on. I'm really hopeful that we're able to do our concerts, because in my opinion, we could do our concerts safely with social distancing. We'll see.
My opinion is kind of that your club, maybe because it's a bar and a restaurant, might fare better in terms of being able to open earlier, just because of they're really the whole food industry. Like my dad's in the food industry, and he was working at a hotel, and anyone, the whole hospitality industry has really taken a nosedive. So I think that for the economy's sake, I could imagine that the governor and the governing bodies are going to do what they can to crank that along.
I think you're right. I think, restaurants will come back sooner rather than later. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the big concerts, though, I guess the numbers play an impact on how many people you get showing up to a venue. It's crazy, though. You think about these huge pieces of real estate. You're a Mets fan, too, like Citi Field. it's going to be sitting empty for who knows how long.
I know you can't. It's not a sustainable economic model to have 6 foot distancing, for professional sports and concerts and all this, clubs and all this stuff. It just doesn't work. You
Yeah.
need the intimacy, and you need a gathering place, to make it work. You can't do it with small numbers.
Yeah. We'll see what we get out there.
Yeah.
It's going to be strange times for everybody.
Yeah.
But maybe the biggest similarity between everyone that I hear from is the joy that we'll experience when we're finally back out there.
I think people will really appreciate it, having lost it, for a given period of time, a long period of time.
Yeah.
In this isolation, if you will.
Yeah, there's no kidding about that. Well,
Yeah.
Mark, I think I've got a good concentrated time here where
Right.
it's good and meaty. So I'll stop the recording